why you leave it in the hands of God.
Okay, guys, what's up? Oh, didn't turn it all the way down. Just sitting here listening to Sirius XM. They have Joel Osteen. Like, hold on a second. I don't think nothing on my eye. But the moment you think ain't nothing on your eye, and then you go to watching that playback and you got something strategically on your eye where you check to make sure you were good. Okay, so this actually stands out to me. The title says, You Have a Defender, 703. That is message number 703. I'm going to check that out later because that sounds like that is strategically for myself. Okay, guys, so today I had went out. I had to pay my bill, so I was going up in the little store to go pay my bill. And on my way to from work to go pay the bill, I was listening to Della Faye testimonies. They're right here on YouTube. Though that channel is that's a blessing. I like listening to those testimonies. The first one I actually listened to, the first one was of a guy that went to prison. You know, I'm for prison reform and criminal justice reform. But that's not this channel. That's the other channel. But that is my passion, purpose. True justice is my passion. We have an illusion of justice in this land, but it's not actual justice the way you think it is. Usually, things are reversed. What's good is bad, and what's bad is good. And what's just is unjust, and what's unjust is just. It's opposite. This is a bad day of opposite day, like a never ending day of opposite day. So, those that you believe are upholding justice, if I say this opposite day, what do you think they really doing? So, in that testimony, he was saying how he was supposed to did a lot of time, and somehow he gave his life over to God. He was going to take his life, but he said before he did, he heard something, which that's God be talking to us, girl. And he said, no, I'm going to give my life to God. And when he gave his life to God, God cut his sentence. He did half of the time. And it literally was changed in the paperwork. And he thought that they were going to come back and say, hold on, you didn't serve your whole sentence. They literally changed the whole paperwork. And it reflected what God told him his time would be. But it was way later. So he kept living under thinking they were going to catch this mistake. But what ended up happening, it wasn't a mistake. It was what the judge said. It was what God said. Way up here, way above that judge, right? Just like my husband. The judge hit that desk and said my husband was doing 40 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. But what does God say about that? What does God say about that? Does God say 40 years? Okay. So it got me hooked on watching those. You'll watch one and then another and another. Like these are real true testimonies of people coming from all different walks of life, but it tells you the nitty and the gritty of what people really went through before coming to God. Right? But today I was listening to the latest one that they just released. And in the video, the lady was talking about how God restored some relationships in her life with her family, and how she had it was this feeling like she wanted to be against her grandmother. She had always brushed it off, and she was like, I don't want to talk. Okay, when her grandmother would call for her mother, she'd be like, your mama on the phone or something like that. And she was saying that God literally restored that relationship, and that he was basically telling her to reach out to her, to stop taking that cold shoulder, you know, that cold shoulder take, right? Sometimes we're led to get rid of people out of our lives, right? To detach from people, to disconnect from certain people in our lives. And when it's our family, it gets very difficult to do so because we tend to love them, right? So sometimes God would tell you to separate from people. But then there's other times when God will tell you to reunite with these people, right? So you'll be thinking, but remember they did this, and I cannot be, with that person. But God would tell you when it's time to reunite with the person, right? So it's best to always just wait and do whatever the Holy Spirit tells you to do in that relationship. If he tell you to separate, you, even though it hurts your heart, you got to separate from that person, or your life is not going to go the way it's intended. That's what I noticed with my two biggest narcissists. As long as they stayed in my life stayed spiraling out of control. And I literally seen the moment that I broke ties with the second biggest narcissist in my life. I promise you, it was like, whoop, it felt like the biggest load. I didn't even know the load on my back and on my shoulders was so heavy. It was like a ton, like an elephant, couple of elephants, or maybe cars were on my back. I felt weighed down that low, but I knew I was being weighed down, but I didn't know how heavy the weight was until we broke ties. I got that story time about how we ended up the final discard, and I promise you, it just felt like everything was lifted off of me. I'm telling you, every aspect of my life did a 360 and turned around. So I realized in that moment that I was going through things that I knew it wasn't just that I was going through these things, because these were things happening to me that I know I couldn't have deserved this, because you reap what you sow. And I did not sow this in my garden. I did not sow this. So I should not be reaping this. So I knew that was not my karma, my what I had sowed into my garden, right? But I kept reaping weeds. And I realized in that moment that it was because of who I was around, the people I had in my life. So God will tell you when to detach from people, but he'll also tell you when to reunite with people. So when she said that, it made me think about, because she was saying how God just wanted her to restore her relationship with her grandmother and then minister to her, start ministering to her grandmother. And it made me think of a time that, the sun is setting, that me and my mother, okay, I love my mother. My mother's no longer here with us. My mother is the reason that I know Jesus, that I know the Lord, and that I have the Holy Spirit. My mother. Because my mother introduced me to Jesus as a child. As a child. My mother did not grow up in church at all. My mother grew up in a very rough inner city in Chicago. And my mother says she just never fit in there. She never fit in. She always wanted more than the surroundings, and it was just nothing but poverty and substances and all types of stuff, but she never was a part of that. She didn't feel connected there, right? So somehow, well, there's a long story, but we end up relocating to Florida. So my mother goes from West Side Chicago to Florida when Florida was actually good. Now Florida, I don't know what they doing. They doing a little too much here in Florida, girl. You might think this some other state. Like, girl, this is where people come to retire. Like, you ain't supposed to be doing all that around here, but they doing some things here in Florida. Like, girl. So now I don't know where you supposed to go to retire. But when Florida was good, we lived on a beach. So she went from the ghetto to the beach. Like, literally, we would open up our back patio and the beach is there. Like, beautiful. And when she got here shortly after coming to Florida, she got saved. Okay, so we were always in the church. Always. But what I realized listening to her story, my story, a lot of people, when you grow up in the church, I don't know why this is, but we venture off. Do not know why, but we leave. And it could be a couple of reasons, because a lot of things in the church, just the structure, the building of the church just is, I don't know. And that kind of pushes you out and away, and you want to adventure more than, you know what I'm saying? So you end up being like that prodigal son. You go out there, but then God, like, come on back. He pull you on back, pull you back in. So she introduced me to the Lord as a young child, right? But my mother, now, see, I'm learning everything full circle. When I turned 40, it was like God just, he revealed so much to me. It was so many things in my life I could not understand, and I did not understand until after I turned 40. Literally, you thinking 40 is the end? No, baby, 40 for me. 40 was the new beginning, not the end. That was when so many things were revealed to me. And I realized this narcissistic spirit that basically was tormenting me through two of my loved ones, which was my mother's sister and her son. Like, that spirit tormented the heck out of me. And from piecing together so many different stories from relatives and even my mother, I can remember back to things she would say, and it'd be like a little puzzle piece, and it'll fit right in that spot where it needs to fit. So it's like God has given me all these puzzle pieces now. So before, my life was a puzzle, one of those 1,000-piece puzzles, not the 100-piece puzzle, 1,000 little tiny piece puzzles, and nothing made sense and nothing fit together. But it's like God is taking, I need to draw that. Oh my gosh. I struggle sometimes. I'm an artist, but I struggle with what to draw. That would be beautiful. A puzzle, and God is reaching over you, and he's putting them pieces into place. Oh my gosh, that would be so beautiful. But and I'm starting to understand. It's literally starting to make sense. It's not fully complete. I'm still a work in progress, but I'm so much better than I was. Oh my gosh. Okay, so anyways, putting those pieces together, I do believe that those narcissistic tendencies, my mother, my grandmother must have housed those tendencies. And I believe that my mother was the golden child, and my aunt was the scapegoat, right? So I'm starting to put this dynamic together. That narcissistic spirit this spirit has come through our family for a while. Now, I don't know how far to track it back, but from grandmother to it missed my mother, but went through my aunt and through my aunt to my little cousin, right? But he doesn't have any kids, so maybe it cut off with him. But he does have a stepchild, so I pray that it doesn't continue on. But it cut off there, right? So by my mother being the golden child and my aunt being the scapegoat, my mother was attacked. She got a lot of narcissistic backlash, what I went through. So she didn't quite take on the spirit, but some of the things that she would do would not be the healthiest way to be. So she took on some of those tendencies, but my mother was not narcissistic. But some of those little traits, I seen them in her. Now, I didn't understand what it was back then when I was a child growing up and a teenager. I didn't understand. I didn't understand about narcissism till I turned 40. That is when I learned the word narcissism. Like I knew the meaning, like I said in my other videos, that we think we know what narcissist is, but we really don't. If we honestly be truthful, it means a whole different thing than we think it means. So I didn't know what a narcissist was. I didn't understand what this dynamic was. All I know was it wasn't fair. It wasn't right. So because my mother grew up in a dynamic with one child being treated in this manner and then other children being treated this way, the way it passed on was my aunt became narcissistic and she treated her children not that good at all. Not that good. Now, my mother didn't do what my aunt did, but what she passed on to us was she couldn't tell us she loved us. My mother, it burned her. She could not say, I love you. She couldn't. I remember one day I was just like digging for her. This is when I moved out of the house. I just wanted her to say, I love you. I always felt like the scum of the earth, like everyone hated me. And I always said, I gotta be a really horrible person because I'm not even my mother's favorite person or my daughter's. So I'm like, what's the greatest love humanly in life? Your mother or the love from your child, right? Your child gonna love their mother more than anything, and your mother is gonna love their child more than anything. And I felt unloved by both at times. And it wasn't that my mother didn't love me. She didn't know how to love me. And she definitely could not say, I love you. She could not say those words. One time when I was moving out, I just wanted her to say, Keita, I do love you. And she told me, I don't love dogs. And dogs don't be in my house. So if you're in my house, that must mean I love you. She couldn't just say, I love you. I'm like, so you compare me to a dog? Like, and that's where I took on that people pleasing because if I be a little better, maybe they'll love me. If I do this, then maybe they'll love me. But see, I was the scapegoat, the golden children, because I had three golden children, and I was the one scapegoat. So that really messed me up. And they could be horrible. They could do everything. Like, and they would still be, it looked as though she loved them more. And they were just terrorizing. Like, oh, I got so many stories. They were horrible. They were, oh my gosh. They were ridiculous. And here I was trying to walk on eggshells to be perfect. And even in trying to be perfect, I still was never good enough. My best effort to be good and be recognized for being good was way less than their barely trying to even behave. So it was always this where my sisters knew. So I was not my mother's favorite. I was a scapegoat, which I didn't learn that until later. I didn't even know what that was, but I always knew. I felt like my mother didn't want me, or that, I mean, even when my mother gave birth to me, she almost lost her life. The same way she actually did lose her life. She almost lost her life back when she was giving birth to me. And she said that I was her child that almost took her out of this, earth, that she almost was outed giving birth to me. She would tell me that. Um, and that's what she was saying when I was moving. She was like, how could you do this to me? I almost was outed giving birth to you. And she did love me. She just couldn't say it or express it. But now I know it's because she didn't know how to say it or express it. She was never taught how to. She didn't get that from her parental figure, how to properly express love, right? Though she loved, and though she probably was loved, that person, my grandmother, may not have known how to express love. My grandmother was out on the streets at 12 and 13 years old. The story of my grandmother is that her father was a white man, and they disowned her. They put her out. So she grew up on the streets, had her first child at, I think it was 13 or 14. And so that was a child raising children. And children raising children, it just, oh, God. Okay, so I have three golden children, and I was the scapegoat. So everything was my fault. Everything they did was my fault. Everything I did was my fault. And then I had a sister that was sick, so she could not be disciplined because when she was disciplined, she would get sick. So when there was aggravation or anger towards that sister, she would have to direct it. My mother would direct it to me. It's my fault because I know better, and she's sick. So everything was just my fault. I was just waiting for the next thing to be my fault. And the next thing, because it's always my fault. Like, literally. And I understood why I was bullied. I understood why I was not the favorite in the family because I just was not good enough. It's if everyone hates you, it has to be a reason everyone hates you. So I gotta be this scum that everyone's saying I am. So let me try to be better. And then upon me trying to improve myself more, I'm still not good enough. I was never good enough. Ever. So this basically lasted my whole life. And it was like, you know what? At a certain age, I came to a resolution that this is how mom is. She loves me. I started realizing she loved me, but she just don't love me like she loved her other three children. I mean, that's just what it is. So we're going to have this relationship, but I'm never going to have that mother daughter relationship that I want, that I desire, that I've seen other people have. I'm not going to have that. And I have to just be okay with this is how my mother is and this is how it's going to be. So, right before my mother passed, it was like, it was so many attacks on the family. It was so much. My mother was riddled with so much. She was so weighed down. She was so overwhelmed. And was crazy. It was like we were being attacked through car accidents. My sister had a car accident, and my sister was saying it wasn't her fault, but the police came out, and somehow, I don't know, the police, she was saying, knew the person and just called that the person was not in fault, even though she had ran the light. I can't really remember what the accident was, but my sister's car was totaled. And my mother was so overwhelmed. She was like, oh my gosh. She kept saying, any slip, like a little bit over, she could have been gone. This was my sister, my baby sister, her baby. That was the one she really babied. That she could have been gone. And now she's paying for a totaled vehicle and it's on her car insurance. Okay, not even, I don't know if it was a month or just a few weeks later, my car was totaled. I had came from I work at a theme park, and we had went to the parade at the theme park, but people were out there drinking and stuff. And I had my little nephew with me, and I was like, I just want to get home. I don't want to be out here with these people drinking. Let me go home. And so my nephew wanted to stop and get food, and I was like, no, I don't even want to stop and get food. I just want to get home. I parked my vehicle. I promise you, I parked my vehicle. We went inside, and at that time I was sleeping on my mother's couch. I'm the one that I can't make, I can't get nothing to work for me. I have always been, if you ever watched that show Girlfriends, Lynn, the one that has all those dreams, aspirations, talented, creative, but nothing she does works, that's me. Nothing. I could go full heartedly after anything, and it never becomes anything. So I'm always the one scripting and scraping and barely making it by. And I'm the one that's laughed at and talked about. I'm the dreamer. I'm the one that will go after their dreams, but I never achieve them. So I come back as the laughing stock of the family, right? So I was sleeping on my mother's couch, and I laid down and I hear boom. And I promise it sounded like something had just blew up. Like, honestly, a drunk driver came through the neighborhood, plowed into my car that I just parked. If I had a stopped and got food, I would have been parking right then when that car plowed into my parked vehicle and pushed my vehicle 15 feet up, bust through my dad had a brick mailbox. Bust through my brick mailbox and then fled the scene. That was the grace of God. It was not us. I could have been getting my nephew out. So not only did my mother have that first accident, but then this. And in this small window, she got two total vehicles on her insurance. And she was so overwhelmed. She was so on edge. And I remember my sister was like, so I went out and found another vehicle. I had got the insurance money and I had to get another vehicle. But when my sister, she was like, okay, so how did Kita get her vehicle before me? My accident was before her. Why don't I have a vehicle? They did not respect my mother. My little sister did not show a lick of respect for my mother. They disrespected my mother in the worst ways, but she loved them. It appeared that she loved them more. Called her all out her name and everything. And I would never make my mouth, I wouldn't even feel right about letting those words come out my mouth. I wouldn't call my mother nothing but mom. And my sister was all in her face and cussing and yelling. I don't have a vehicle, and Kita already got a vehicle. Then my little narcissistic aunt, there's a story time about that, how she had me come home that day with two vehicles. And my mother was like, I sent you with her to help her. And how she come back with not one, but two vehicles? That's a mess. And my aunt gave her that narcissistic, because nothing's their fault. She said, oh, well, I fell asleep when she was signing the paperwork. But either way it go, I had a vehicle. And my mother, wait. Did I get my vehicle yet? Because I think that's what it was about. I think I just got the money to go get it. I don't think I got my two vehicles yet. And my sister was pressuring my mother, like, how Kita go out and get a vehicle before I do, and I had my accident first. And remember, Kita's the not so favorite. I'm all the way at the bottom, and she's the favorite. So how dare she get hers before me? And my sister was cursing my mother out. I promise you, cussing out. And I was like, Mom, I need to get a car. So I was trying to talk to her. I was trying to talk, like literally talk. And anytime I would talk to my mother, she would say, it sounds like I'm whining. Like I literally don't even know how to talk to her without her saying I'm whining. But they're raging and cursing her out, and they get better results than I got from trying to talk to my mother. And I was so mad. I was like, she always does this to me. I promise you, she always treats me like this, and they get treated like that. And they I wouldn't even dare disrespect her the way they do. And I was so mad. And usually I would go silent. There was no getting through. She would never see things my way, so it wasn't no point in trying to talk to her. That usually I would just stop talking to her. I would not talk to her no more. It'll be a long, time. I'll just hide by. I'm not gonna disrespect my mother. My mother say hello, Keto. I'm gonna say hello, mom. But it would be like that high and by type thing. And God told me don't do that. He said, do not. Don't hold it against her. Talk to your mother. And right after that, she she chose in every situation. It feels like she always chose them, though they were doing the wrong thing. She chose them. They would always be first choice over me. And but God said, don't hold it against her. Just talk to your mother, forgive her, let it go. Promise you. Next week, my mother was gone. I would not hold it against her. And right before she passed, she had this conversation with me. And it's the conversation where you feel like your parent gonna pass, but I'm like, my mother's really young, so this ain't that, but why are we having this conversation again? And she was like, yeah, Keita. She was talking about my husband that's incarcerated. I've been fighting for his freedom for 22 years now, but at this time it was 2016. So it hadn't been 22 years yet. And she was like, Keita, you about to have your 15-year-old. What you gonna do? And I said, I don't know. She's growing up so fast. And I had already promised myself, because then the next thing she wanted to talk about my husband, Marcello. She would try to talk to me, but I had already wrote that off. I was like, we're never going to see eye to eye. We're not having that conversation. So I would always, so she was like, what about Marcello? Ain't nobody getting him out? Like, he been there a long time. And your daughter is almost grown. Like, she was like, ain't nobody doing nothing for him. His mother's not trying to fight for him. And I said, no, ain't nobody fighting for him but me. She said, man, somebody need to do something. I said, yeah, it done been too long anyway. I said, I've been fighting too long. And she said, no, kid, I think you're going to fight to the end. And I said, no, Mom, it's been way too long. Like, literally, I've been waiting too long on him to come home. I've been fighting too long, and it's not happening. She said, you're going to wait to the end. And she said, I'm going to get all my grandbabies. I guess since you waiting, I'm going to get all my grandbabies from which she said my second young, no, for me, is two sisters down from me. She's not the baby sister, but she's two down from the baby. So she's the second youngest. I said that all confusing. But she said, I'm going to get all my kids from her, which happened. My sister has all the kids. The baby has no kids. The second oldest has no kids. And I have one. She said, I'm going to get all my grandchildren from her. And it came to pass. And we did not know my mother was passing. She went in for an outpatient surgery to pass a kidney stone. And she never came back, never came home. If I had got mad at my mother, which my sister, I pray for her because those were some of her last words she said to my mother. That raging night when she was arguing with my mother, those are some of the last things she said to my mother. And God told me, don't take anger. Do not get mad at her. And I felt so relieved. I mean, I miss my mother. I hate that she passed that way. But I did not disrespect my mother before her passing. So when the Holy Spirit tell you something, and he comes in so slight, it's not aggressive, but you would do best just listen. You know how much regret I would have, and I would have to carry if I had got mad at my mother and we weren't talking when she passed unexpectedly. All right, guys, that I'm just telling these stories because it's helping alleviate a lot off of me. Oh, and then just to tell you, I tell you in other videos, but just to make this story complete, we also had a conversation a little bit before where I asked my mother, I was like, you didn't even want me? Did you want me? Because I was always treated different. Like literally, I was always treated different. And I have four sisters, but my older sister moved off and she wasn't my mother's daughter. She was my dad's daughter, but my mother raised her as though that was her daughter. So she had three. Now, in that household, once my sister left, it was three against one. You favor three. It wasn't two and two. Like my husband goes through this. My husband is definitely the scapegoat, and his brother is definitely the golden child. So it's one and one. One the mother can't do no wrong, and one the mother feels can't do no right. But think about having three against one. What is wrong with me? Now you see why I yelled out, I screamed out, cried out for God. What is wrong with me? And that's why I told you at 40, he started revealing what was wrong. Um, she said, Keita, I loved you. I always loved you. I just didn't have time for you. She honestly told me the truth. Every other time I asked my mother that in life, she would always tell me I love all my children the same. And I could see the difference. I could see the difference. But my mother was raising me differently. My mother was raising me to be independent. And she raised them to be dependent. And in her passing, she said, Keita, I can't trust nobody but you. You are the only one I can trust. And I felt my mother could not stand me at times, didn't want me, regretted having me because my mother always wanted to go to college, and I was the one that kind of stopped that trajectory. Even though she did go back to college right before she passed. She graduated with her master's at 53 years old, 6 months before passing from outpatient surgery. All right, guys. Make amends where you need to make amends. Listen to the Holy Spirit. Let go who He's telling you to let go. I'm still searching. I'm still asking Him because I need to know like who I need to let go and who I need to let in. I want Him to be my doorkeeper because I don't make no right decisions on my own. All right, guys.